Hello, everyone, and welcome to another fantabulous episode of the Killer Kaiju Podcast. Today, we are transporting ourselves forward in time by, let's say, 9 years or so from our last episode. And on our journey through time, we managed to pick up another fantastic close friend of ours and guest on the show today. Today, we have Phill on our podcast. Say hi, Phill.
Hey, how's it going?
So Phill, like Josh, has not seen any of these era Godzilla films, maybe dabbled into a few of the newer ones, but hasn't seen these, let's just say, classics without being too harsh on them before. Probably heard of them as when people mention Godzilla and they talk about Godzilla in pop culture before the new movies anyway, they often refer to this movie and this series going forward. That being said, these movies are part of the Heisei series, which this one is actually technically in the Showa era of Japan during that time period, but it is grouped together with the Heisei series because it carries that tone and also carries the story onward from this film, so it often gets grouped in with those, and it was a significant time jump. That being said, folks, if this is your first time on the podcast, which it might be, the two hosts, as always, I'm Lucas, and I have Josh with me as well.
Hey, what's up?
And basically what we're doing with this one is this is the return of Godzilla 1984, or just titled simply in Japan when it launched, Godzilla 1984. There are two
H2O.
versions. Yeah, exactly. It's funny that you say that. We'll dive into that later on as well. Look at Josh just being a fucking mind reader over here. So basically this film has had two releases. Basically what it has is it has the original Japanese release in 1984. Chances are, if you're watching this and you're not a die hard Godzilla fan, you may have seen the American version of this, which was very widely distributed in North America. Probably one of the first Godzilla films to get a proper North American release that was actually successful and went to theaters. And it was done in 1985. And they did a similar thing to what they did in the original Gojira, basically porting it over with Raymond Burr, who is a famous actor from the 60s, 70s. And they just imposed him in the film and kind of made their own film and called it Godzilla King of the Monsters. They do a similar thing with this one. So either version you're watching, there's I think there's like a 13-minute time difference between the two. So if you are watching the American cut, just keep an eye on the parts. We'll talk about when they're cut so you can stay on with us. So as always, this is a podcast / commentary, folks. So what we'll be doing is we'll be talking about the film, giving you our facts and review as we watch along. You can obviously watch along with us with the countdown we provide when we start the film, or if you're watching on YouTube, we do have a visual counter so you can timestamp where you are in the video, as these movies tend to get kind of long. So if you have to come back, there are no issues there. So there's a lot to talk about and unfold with this movie. So we're going to dive right into this film, give you an old countdown, and enjoy this ride. Are you guys ready?
Yep.
I'm ready.
All right, let's go. 3, 2, 1, blast off. And I got the timer. Always have to say that so Josh doesn't remind me.
Well, forgot like 10 episodes.
So the remake of this one, when they brought it out in 1985, was basically the same idea, like I said earlier, with the original, where they had Raymond Burr actually reprise his role as Steve Martin. Not that Steve Martin, but it's actually funny. Steve Martin became super popular in the 70s and early 80s. So in the Americanized version, instead of calling him Steve Martin, they just call him Mr. Martin to avoid the confusion, which was probably a smart role on their end because people definitely would have been a little confused. Oh, yeah. Did you see Steve Martin? Well, he was in Godzilla? What? I mean, I wouldn't put it past Steve Martin to be in a Godzilla film. Was it Leslie Nielsen? Was it Leslie Nielsen from Airplane and Naked Gun? He was one of the original people they wanted in the Americanized version, but they're like, no, that's too silly. We'll get Raymond Burr from the original and bring him back as his same character. So, I mean, and kudos to him because a lot of, North American actors tend to take these films kind of silly, and Raymond Burr, especially being involved in the original, which was very serious in tone, as we all know from its history, being based off of the Lucky Dragon 5 ship accident and then Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. He came into this.
The dude in the coat or the life jacket. I hate open water.
You and me both. Phil, how do you feel about open water?
Puke.
I do not like open water at all.
Awesome. So we're all pissing our pants. There we go. Excellent.
Not a fan.
So at this point, guys, Godzilla's been put to rest for 9 years. It took 9 years for them to get back up into their comfort zone to bring out another Godzilla film. And personally, I'm a little glad that they waited, because the effects work just flew in. I think from 77 to 82, there was a really big boom because Japan was getting out of its economic crisis, and they were getting a little more income spreading out again since the recovery, and we were getting into the Cold War. So I mean, there was a lot of upheaval in technology and trying to be better. So like there was a lot of money being put into filming and stuff like that as well. Especially because Japan wasn't too involved in the Cold War. If anything, they were kind of used as an ally force, and they did a lot of housing during the Cold War, but they really weren't too involved because of their, absolute determination to not have any nuclear weapons and to be very anti-nuclear for that side of things, for weaponry, obviously because of what happened to their country. So this film really reflects that, and it shoves it down your throat sometimes, and it's really great. And that's one of the benefits of watching this version, because the American remake does take a lot of the Cold War tension and really tries to make the States look like the good guys in a way. And they're not the bad guys in this film by any means, but they're also not helping the cause by any means. What a nice somber tone we get for this intro. I like how they just cut from this huge boating accident. Now it's like do, 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 do. Classic. Yeah, this film, this is probably the only happy tone you'll get in this movie. This one is pretty dark, and it kind of gets right off to the bat. We'll notice that as this film gets off its start here. So this is obviously the boat that the guys were just encountered in, the Yahata Maru number 5, which is also another nod to the Lucky Dragon number 5 from the original Gojira film, and from the actual boat. So I pretty much, we'll just have to wait and see until our main protagonist here boards and finds out. It looks pretty empty to me. So
they're dead.
Yeah, they're dead as fuck. So really cool, interesting fact about this movie as well, just to kind of give you where it came from. So in 1982, Mr. Tanaka, who has been the original inventor of Godzilla and produced all of the Godzilla films up until this point involved in Toho, really wanted to bring Godzilla back because he saw, but they were scared because in 76, I think it was, the remake of King Kong came out, which was with Jessica Lange, I think that's her name, right, from American Horror Story, and Jeff Bridges. And it didn't do that well. It was really poorly received, and it kind of scared Toho because they're like, well, if a big monster movie can't make it in North America, what's the sense of putting one out in Japan? So they got a little bit of cold feet, and they really didn't want to release anything. So they kind of put them on the back burner until the early 80s. And I kind of like that because now we get a lot more scary elements, kind of that horror element we get here with it being the
I'm just thinking
mid-80s.
of the movie Ghost Ship now.
Yeah. Oh, that's not a good sign.
Dead corpses everywhere.
Yeah. We get kind of a nice Psycho. If we've all seen Psycho, we get a nice little Psycho shot here. The spin around chair. So one thing I do love about, Japanese movies in general, but because they popularize so many North American films, they tend to, and especially in the Heisei era of these films, each movie tends to take from a movie that was popular at the time. So this one is obviously like kind of its own thing, being early 84, and they're really just trying to reinvent Godzilla, but the next films all kind of carry a thing. Like the next film takes a lot from like Little Shop of Horrors, and then the next one took a lot from the Terminator series because that was what was popular, and then the one after that is Indiana Jones. So they tend to take a lot of inspiration from what's popular at the time and kind of throw their own Godzilla spin on it, per se. It's like if you have a turntable, they just have the one side of Godzilla playing all the time, and then they just grab whatever the top 20 is and they throw it on the right side and they just mix it together, and that's their movie.
They should put Rick Moranis in one of these now.
What was that?
Yeah, I don't even want to know, actually. I don't know. I don't want to know.
Brain matter or something.
I always wondered about that scene. He's laying down and you see the hand fall, the dead hand. There's no noise or jump scare. It's just a common thing. He didn't notice the hand falling. I'm like, I wonder if they planned to like add in a sound effect to scare people at that moment, but then they just kind of forgot on post. See that? Naked booty on the door. There's always a little bit of nudity in one of these Godzilla films.
Oh, nice.
It's a rarity, but
it happens. This is probably the last time it happens, to be honest. Though I said that last episode, but
also you notice how Life Jacket Man was the only one that survived. See, I told you.
Yeah, see,
scared of water, safety first.
You would exactly just hide in the locker because the locker's not going to stop you from drowning. Yo, I'm a pro at being stuffed in lockers. I did that my whole high school life. Come on, I'd be good at that.
I don't know if you'll fit now, bud.
I didn't
You're
fit then either.
you
They
tower
tried.
over me.
They tried, but they failed, sir. And I just laughed. Not actually. No.
Luckily, in my schools, I only had half lockers. I ain't
Kids
fit
were
in
too
one of those.
scared to come close to me, so I didn't have any friends, and I didn't get shoved in lockers. I had Godzilla movies. Whoa. So, what do you guys got your bets on what that is?
Snail?
I thought it was like a slug of some sort. Yeah. Josh, what do you got bets on?
I was gonna say a slug.
Yeah, some kind of slug. I like that he's got a harpoon through him, though. It's kind of a nice touch. It's like, yeah, someone already tried to kill this fucker, and he's not going down without a fight.
Kind of reminds me of Alien,
Yeah.
There you go.
like the face part.
Oh,
the
he's like
face
a little bit of
huggers.
a lobster too.
So, going through the Showa films, we always talk like, I mean, it's back when the
Yeah,
Showa films came out, we didn't know about it. But now that we've, this film has been popularized in culture and how Godzilla is represented, we know that Godzilla is heavily radioactive. And
nuclear.
It wasn't really explained too much in the Showa series. Sometimes there's little nods to it, and you're like, how the hell does this guy take so many blows and not die? Like, he's bulletproof. What the hell is he made out of? So I liked that in this film, they kind of explore the concept that Godzilla is definitely radioactive, and that was always the plan, but they explore how he would affect the world around him with being radioactive. So as we see here, the character is going to explain what it was, because in Japan, if you're a marine biologist, you would know that what it was, but I sure as hell didn't until he says here. But what we saw was actually a sea louse. It's like sea lice. So essentially, they're little bugs that live in the water, and they cling on to sea life and essentially suck their blood and eat them and feed off their nutrients. Right? Well, the idea is that it fed on Godzilla. And because of his radioactive tendencies and his blah, 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 regenerator G1 virus, essentially, which they'll dive more into, it essentially changed its genetic makeup and made it grow and increase in size and become very aggressive and violent, which is cool. It's not something we've seen before. I think it's a nice little touch. I don't think they explore it enough in this movie, while something like the newer films like Godzilla versus Destoroyah near the end of the Heisei series, which is a personal favorite and a fan favorite, and the newer Japanese release Shin Godzilla, they tend to explore that factor a lot more in depthly and actually show the effects of man and structures and the integrity of their land and health a lot more. Like where someone comes into contact with Godzilla and they gotta get a full radiation spray down because they're radioactive themselves now just from being close to him.
I almost feel like they should have made another movie that just involved Godzilla going to nuclear plants for feedings and stuff like that, causing ruckus.
And I think that's honestly what this one and a lot of the Godzilla and the Heisei series touch upon. I feel like this one probably gets as close to that plot as possible. While this one does have a lot of him just being a creature awoken from atomic testing, but he does feed on nuclear radiation, especially in the legendary films. It's not necessarily Godzilla doing the nuclear destruction, but other creatures as well that have risen to kind of challenge his throne.
He's just mad that he got woken up.
Yeah.
I relate. Godzilla's a whole mood.
And notice how we have a typical Godzilla trope character, a journalist. There's always got to be one. There's a journalist. Right. There's some kind of female character, love interest, who's, like trying to get up on that. And then there's usually a photographer of some sort. That's usually, and then the military man.
Also a doctor or a mad scientist character.
So here we get introduced to another professor here. I have to look up the actor really quickly in our Godzilla Bible here. As always, folks, for all your Godzilla information, I definitely recommend checking out wikizilla.org. They have tons of information, probably the same information and more in-depthly that you would find on a site like IMDb. So I definitely recommend checking it out. That's where we do get a lot of our basic information without me having to go deep diving into Japanese forms and translating. So the actor who plays this gentleman here, our professor, his name is... Oh god, now we have to guess the game of which character is which. Yosuke Natsuki is basically who plays Dr. Hayashida, who's our biologist professor here, giving him the pictures, which are still shots of the original Gojira. So they obviously are saying they're trying to see, is this Godzilla the creature you saw? And judging by that face, I'm thinking it was.
Mhm.
But the interesting thing about this professor is Josh asked, I think at the beginning or before the podcast, we were talking about Akiko Hirata, who's played the Dr. Serizawa on the original Gojira and has been in many films throughout the Showa series, being a reoccurring actor, always playing a different role. His last role in a Godzilla film was in 75's Terror of Mechagodzilla, which we covered last on the podcast, being the end of the Showa series. And he did a lot of promotion and executive producing for this film. And he was set to play the professor role. But due to the late 1983, early 84, he's been battling lung cancer, and it became a little too hefty for him to deal with. And unfortunately, he passed before the shooting of this film and was unable to portray his role. But he was cast to come back from like the original and then reboot the next original series. And unfortunately, he was unable to do so. Not to take anything away from Natsuki here. He does a great job in the role. Personally, I think the best acting we get is our cabinet prime minister here, Mitamura. The actor's name who plays the prime minister is Kaiju Kobayashi, and he is a phenomenal actor. He hasn't done too much, at least for movies that have been properly done over into North America. He's done a few sitcoms and maybe TV shows, but mainly his big role was playing prime minister in this movie. And it brings a heavy realism to it with his seriousness he brings and his uncertainty, especially as we get later in the film and we see America and Russia come into play. Kind of, he's like the mature adult between two children trying to balance everything out, essentially. And he does a really good job without making it comical, but keeping it serious. So I think definitely.
You notice in that one part, they were talking about how they should hide it from the world.
Yep. And
very
that's
Soviet Union, like, just saying.
Absolutely.
And then the downfall. So I don't think they should hide that from your people.
Nope, not at all. And that's part of the subliminal messaging because, Japan is pretty hesitant in their media and they pretty keep a hush lock on everything. And I think especially these days, and I feel like a lot of that happened because of when the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs were dropped, they obviously had to have a silence agreement with the States where they wouldn't talk about the effects of the disasters of it in media because they don't want America to look bad. And this was like their surrender, essentially, their part of their treaty and surrender. So they had a lot of silence and control in what was allowed in the media. And I feel like after that was lifted, they kind of just kept a similar angle just to keep their people calm and assertive because they were worried another disaster event might happen. For better or for worse, a lot of people in the country didn't like it. And I feel like that might be kind of them giving the jab at the government here in this movie. Lots of subliminal
for
messaging.
Better or worse as soon as it came up on the TV as well.
It's like I've seen this movie 30,000 times.
Exactly.
Interesting enough, we talked about how so basically I used to go to a family friend's house all the time to watch these movies as a kid before they were over in North America, and I had to go to a couple of local video stores after I wasn't able to go to their house anymore and pick up some VHS tapes. And I originally got the two Showa ones, and I wanted to watch the newer ones. I was getting a little older and I had watched the Showa ones up until I was like 9 years old, 6 years old, that era, kind of in that just before 10 probably. I was like, Mom,
so that's why you thought they were good.
Yeah, I want
it
you
makes
guys.
sense now.
They're good.
To you it's them. Like, oh my God, it's like CGI before CGI would be a thing.
And you know what? With the newer movies, I remember going to see Godzilla King of the Monsters, which has Ghidorah, Rodan, and Mothra and Godzilla all in it. And I remember taking my mom to see it because I wanted to personally be there to be like, you see this? You see how real and awesome this is? This is how it looked for me when I was a kid with my imagination.
Exactly. And I bet your mom watching it as a kid, watching you watch them, would have been like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, I'd turn around to tell her something and she'd left. I was sitting alone and I had no idea.
Have you ever heard of there's a rap group out there called Monster Island Czars? You ever heard of them?
No, but I'm gonna look it up as soon as we're done this now.
Yeah, every persona is like they're like a monster. It's King Ghidorah, and there's like a couple other ones.
Yeah, Lucas is already.
Yeah, I'm gonna have stoked. I already have it written down. Yeah, because I know like there's obviously a lot of like Kaiju and Godzilla themed musical projects. So that's one I haven't heard of. Like, I mean, the obvious one is Gojira, and the coolest thing, I don't know, a lot of people don't know, is they were originally called Godzilla. That was their band name, and Toho sent them a cease and desist.
Yeah.
And they had to change
Yeah,
it to
Lucas
Gojira.
reminded me on that one. I didn't know that.
Didn't know
I
that, yeah,
just
no,
recently got into
yeah.
Gojira, and I was like, "Oh, really? Shit!" I always thought to myself, "I'm like Gojira, run! It's
Yeah.
Gojira!"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Damn, okay, that's why." I'm like,
Yeah.
"It's Godzilla, isn't it?"
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
I think is
Goj-
funny because they're like,
Mind
yeah,
blown.
you can't call it Godzilla, which is the North American name for the creature, but hell, use our original Gojira name. We're cool with that. What?
Yeah.
But
And
the
then I'm
reason I
convinced
think
for the song "Flying Whales," it's written about Star Trek. An entire movie, and it's just about flying whales. I'm like, oh shit.
and I guess
Mind blown.
they probably got around the cease and desist for Gojira because Godzilla is trademarked by Toho because it is a made up word. Well, Gojira is actually an abbreviation of two Japanese words meaning gorilla and whale. So they can't really coin
Gorilla
a
whale.
word. So that's probably how they got away with it. But imagine like this professor here being Akiko Hirata. How good he would have been. It's a shame. I mean, I'm not trying to undermine this guy's performance in Suki here, but it would have been a very cool thing to see him come back for this film.
See, that one bums me out because I forgot that you told me that he died, and I was like, man, we can meet this guy at G Fest.
No,
G Fest.
he doesn't know what G Fest is.
Based around Godzilla.
Godzilla G Fest. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So they often
Sweet.
have a lot of actors and
drink
people
G
come
Fuel.
over. A little co-marketing. Yeah, go to G Fest, crack a G
Sponsored by
Fuel.
G Fuel.
Yeah, it's Godzilla Fuel today.
I hope when we show up, that's there now. Just for so randomly.
I'm gonna bring some. I mean, they have Godzilla versus Kong energy drinks out right now, and they have like different special limited variant cans you can get with like the different characters on them, and they're very
$2 now. By the
expensive.
time we go, it'll be 50 a can.
Oh, bro, they're already like 50 a can. Godzilla stuff never goes down in value; it only goes up. It's everyone's fun fact for today. If you see something with Godzilla on it and it's not marketed by a North American company, buy it. It's gold right there. You're sitting on gold, my man.
Goldzilla.
The exact.
Did you like Power Rangers as a kid?
There
Did
you
I
go.
I loved Power Rangers. My parents couldn't stop me from watching it so much. They did though. They did stop me from watching it.
They're like, Phil, it's too much. That's too much Power Rangers.
There's a Japanese version. It's called Ultraman.
Oh, yeah, I watched that when I was
so
a
I
kid
was like,
too.
we're
And
we're
Kamen
gonna
Rider.
eventually get there, so you should come and watch those episodes with us.
Oh yeah.
Because Power Rangers is pretty dope. Other than I'm a lame and I only watched like Wild Force. I think that's what it was called.
Oh, Wild
So-
Force is okay.
I
But
liked that one.
But Power Rangers, like the original one, you know that like it was a Japanese show.
Yeah, it was
that-
Kamen Rider.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
and then it got brought over to the States, and they just like, so like all the footage that you see of them fighting is like the Japanese footage.
Yep.
And like it's very obvious. Even like the bad guys are like dubbed over, like they're what they're saying. But like then they'll just like shoot them in like a high school, and then they'll be like, "Hey, how's it going?" And like that's that's all they shot with the American.
Does that
and-
mean we can include that in this series?
Yeah,
and
we'll be
somehow watch
watching
Power
Kamen
Rangers
Rider.
too?
We'll do some comparison.
Okay, cool. I'm in.
We've got a lot of weird shows to watch. Like we've got just a little bit of background history, just in case this is someone's first time on the podcast. Subaraya, the original special effects director for Godzilla, he did a lot of the Showa films and then vanished kind of halfway through because he left Toho and started his own production company called Subaraya Productions. And being a huge kaiju lover, he decided to do Ultraman. Well, actually, it started off as Ultra Q, and it was about these 5 essentially space Power Rangers. They were like agents, and they went and hunted down monsters and unexplained Earth forces. So it's kind of like a mixture of like Twilight Zone and God knows what. It was a really cool show. And basically at the end, one of the aliens they come into contact with ends up being the force and the species that controls Ultraman. So they give one of the characters the power to turn into Ultraman at the end of the season. And that brilliant episode inspired Subaraya to make the Ultraman series, which then went on to inspire Kamen Rider, which became Power Rangers, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's the Toho version of Ultraman they made to kind of combat the TV success because movies were declining because, there's a decline in the economy. So people couldn't afford it. So they had to watch stuff at home rather than going to the theater, right? It was a lot cheaper. So Ultraman was doing a lot better than Godzilla. So Toho's like, yeah, let's make a version of our own. And they called it Zone Fighter. And that is on its way to us as we speak. We will definitely be covering that. So it's essentially Ultraman, Power Rangers-esque, but instead of monsters, they use Toho monsters like Godzilla, Gigan, King Ghidorah. And it's really cheesy, really bad, but really great.
I just want to watch the Ghidorah episodes.
Yeah. Not to mention in Ultraman, they often bought old suits.
Soviet
from
nuclear
Toho.
powered ballistics missile. See, Soviet Union. Boom.
Oh yeah, bro. This is the Cold War. This is like the biggest part of the story. In the way, the Russians kind of are the ones who, in lack of a better terms, fuck everything up in this movie. Oh, look at that. Ron Burgundy right there.
Yo, yeah.
That stash. Getting that Anchorman look there. Classic. But in Ultraman, they often used old suits they bought from Toho, like Godzilla suits and Anguirus suits, and they pretty much chopped them up and repurposed them and made their own monsters. It's like watching Ultraman one time. There's this one character named Jurass. I'm like, isn't that just Godzilla with a flower on his head? Yeah, it was.
Keyword
That's exactly what it was.
I just want to love.
Yeah, he literally looks like a Pokemon.
He wants to blossom.
Like the
Something
evolution of
beautiful.
Chikorita.
Now that you said Ron Burgundy, I can't like unsee it.
Yeah.
I also just have to point out the obvious fact for those who aren't watching that every
Is it a
Russian
whale?
is 100% North American and has hideous Russian accents. Amerikanska. Like, are you fucking kidding me? You'll just hear them talk full Russian and then they'll say an American word like Los Angeles. And they'll just say it so American.
Los Angeles.
Or they say like Los Angeles. You're like, okay, stop. You're hurting yourself.
This is like when you try and get a friend to do like an Australian accent and sounds like a British accent or something.
You're like,
Just
yeah,
does not sound right.
yeah, they're like, it sounds good, right? You're like, yeah, you keep at it.
Try again.
You need to watch more Crocodile Hunter. Learn from the master, Steve Irwin. There you go.
They're on the run from Chernobyl.
Yeah. So obviously, a creature like Godzilla, and that was the point of the Showa era. In the Showa era, it was always Godzilla was Japan's problem. You know what I mean? Like there were certain ones like Destroy All Monsters where we had Americans come in because they were going to space, like Nick Adams and such. But America was never really, and other countries weren't involved in Godzilla's attacks. When in the grand scheme of things, if I was, a close by country like Russia or like Korea or something, I'd be a little worried if a giant radioactive monster was destroying everything, because where is it going to go after it's done with where it is?
Yeah, I mean, like even if I lived on the moon, I'd be terrified.
Yeah,
Said it like 5 times. Close. Leave Japan. Don't even go back. This is like 30 years of kaiju terror.
So I feel like this is the first movie that really tackles all the world's powers would get involved if this was a thing, especially here, like because Russia has a reason to be involved, because here you can see they're being attacked. I mean, at this point, I think we can say that it's Godzilla. Because they're obviously not being attacked by any like enemy subs, and they're looking clear as day.
Now in this one, is Godzilla the hero or the villain?
So in the Heisei series, thank goodness Godzilla is not portrayed as the hero. He is the villain in the series, bringing it back to basis, as that's what Tanaka wanted. He thought that the Showa series kind of strayed too far away and changed Godzilla, not for the better. They did their own thing, but he thinks that going back to the gritty original was the way to go. So in 1982, he decided to get a couple screenwriters to put together a rough script just so he can throw it out there to get some feelers on maybe who would want to do a Godzilla movie. Because this was, at this point, 5 or 4 years after the King Kong movie that didn't do well. So they're like, well, let's see what we can do. Let's see if anyone catches the eye from anyone. So they sent the script over. The script had to do with Godzilla going up against an alien which formed together called Bagan. And he was never used. He's in a couple video games, but he's never been used in any of the Godzilla films. And I think after getting down and doing this script, they learned that they want to really make it like the original and make Godzilla the main focus. They thought bringing in another monster would be kind of too taking away from Godzilla when they're trying to get this new generation of people into Godzilla. So in 1982, like we said, he sent out a lot of scripts. And one of the directors who really thought it was a great idea and came back with a counter option, which I mean totally fits in with our podcast, was Steve Miner. And for those who don't know, Steve Miner directed Friday Part 2 and Part 3, Friday the 13th Part 2 and 3, and he also directed Halloween H2O, which is to ping pong back to Josh's reference earlier on the podcast. I was like, oh, just wait for it. And he wanted to do it.
An obsession with just starting after the second film, be like nothing after counts.
Yeah, And so technically a Godzilla movie was in the works for North America. It was going to be a North America Godzilla movie in the 80s, and it was going to be called Godzilla King of the Monsters in 3D. Because obviously after doing part 3 in 3D, he thought, yeah, let's do a Godzilla movie in 3D. And, he had a lot of it set to go, and they kind of changed Godzilla more into like a T-Rex-esque character, but still kept all the original basics, the atomic breath, the nuclear creation. And just because he wanted to do it in 3D and he wanted to do stop animation, the budget was way too high and he couldn't get Toho or anyone to agree on the product. So it was eventually dropped. But to think that North America considered a Godzilla movie in the 80s, that's pretty impressive. And I think that's why they did an American version of this one at 85 and just kind of reimposed Raymond Burr in certain shots and released it there, because at that moment, North America was probably getting a little like, ooh, exciting, a Godzilla movie in the works, haha, and it attracted a lot of attention. So they're like, hey, if we spend a little bit of money and steal their movie, we can still make a buck and not have to spend an atrocious amount of money. So that's sort of what they did. Though I would have loved to see a Friday the 13th director. Yeah, exactly.
There's been very little miniatures in this movie thus far.
Yeah, and they definitely spent all the money on the miniatures for the ending half of the film, for sure. And it's honestly some of the best miniature work we've seen, which is expected if it being a 9-year gap since the last one we saw. This part always makes me laugh.
Lives.
At least it's not the spitting paper, where it's like,
Yeah.
I wonder,
saves the day.
They probably just went to a random paper mill and just shot a bunch of random stuff for the day, because I wonder what that paper actually says,
Yeah.
So obviously the whole story is they were trying to keep it hush hush because they don't want people to get panicked. But this news reporter who found the guy originally knew that wasn't right, especially with their survivor's sister here being incredibly worried and thinking he was dead. And they were just keeping her in silence. That's totally unacceptable. So he was going to be the freedom fighter and fight the man and expose the truth. And we just know how that happens. I mean, it's probably good that it happened, because with
punk style.
Yeah, with Russia being involved now, it's going to get out about Godzilla. So in my opinion, it's not going to hurt much by what he did. So I'm glad he did the right thing, because the girl was like saying, that she's going to school and her brother would go off onto these dangerous sea missions just to get enough money for her to go to school so she can have a better life. And
was her brother the dude in the life jacket?
Yeah.
Isn't he alive though?
Yeah, he's alive, but they told her he was dead because they said no one survived. He was missing in action. And then when they brought him back, they had to keep him hush hush in the hospital and keep him under the wraps so he didn't tell people about Godzilla, because they wanted to avoid panic. Right?
Yeah. Logic, big brain energy.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of thought put into this. So,
did you ever watch the animated series? The
one on Netflix?
No, I don't know if it's on Netflix. It was like the Fox show.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, like the one where the guys who did the Jetsons and Flintstones. That one.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's oof. The one where Godzilla has laser eyes.
We should watch it.
And breathes fire instead of atomic breath. Oh yeah, it's rough. It's funny, but it got 2 seasons and then it got canceled immediately. There's been some good Godzilla TV shows, like we'll get to the Emmerich Godzilla with Matthew Broderick from 1998, that atrocity. But what really
Ferris
came
Bueller.
good of that one, the man who killed a guy.
Yeah, with the Matthew Broderick one, wasn't there an animated series after
yes,
that on Fox?
And that one is great. If that's the one we're talking about, that one's gold.
That one's good. That one aged well. Eh?
Yeah, I feel like 1998 Godzilla, trash, horrible movie. But then they took everything that movie did wrong and they did it right in the TV show, and they kind of did a 180 real quick, and they fixed it. Like they gave him atomic breath and they made him more of a fighter, other monsters.
Yeah, he was like a hero in that. They were like, he was like a homie that they would like sick after.
Defender.
Essentially,
Yeah.
I noticed that's where a lot of the beginning movies ended, where now he's a defender of the earth, where I'm like, now it should be a villain though. Like,
right.
You should fear this man. Like Godzilla is something to fear.
Yeah. And like in these ones,
as a toy,
he still is a villain essentially. And there's some moments where he saves the earth, but not for a fact of I'm going to save the earth because I'm a good guy. It's, hey, this big asshole is in my way and I'm going to kick his ass because I'm a big tough guy. And then he defeats the monster and then he turns around and blows up the whole city anyway. So they're rooting for Godzilla because he's the lesser evil, essentially, is how they view it.
I just view that he's angry that they woke him up. He's always
Yeah.
napping. Something I've noticed. 15 movies and there's always waking him up.
There's
from
always
a nap.
there's a really primo Godzilla nap session. This one, you're gonna love it. Godzilla takes a 10 out of 10 nap, and you're like, oh, that man is comfy as hell. Like immediately, like I remember one point I was watching this
King
movie
of naps.
because I watch these movies obviously once or twice before we do the podcast, so I can gather all my facts. And I was laying on the bed and I was all cozy and comfy, and I'm looking down at my phone, looking up at the movie, and I'm like looking at the scene where he takes the nap. I'm like, yeah, I feel you, bro. That's me right now. So here, I believe they're dropping pretty much sensories into the ocean so they can kind of plan out where he is. So essentially like dropping bombs. And for those who have seen the newer legendary films, there's Kong Skull Island, where they drop bombs on Skull Island, and they're very similar in design, the propeller with the wings. And that's why in that movie, that was an homage to this film, to kind of throw you back to the same kind of ways they found Godzilla that they were finding Kong. So I thought that was a nice little touch. I didn't realize that until I went back and watched this movie after watching that one. So here we get the first POV shot of Godzilla. This has never been done. Really cool point of view. I think they did a really good job doing this
sleeping.
one. Hey, he's not sleeping anymore. I mean, it's a little blurry-eyed. And for those who watched Godzilla 1998 with Matthew Broderick, there's a scene where the cracked ground goes between his legs. That's what this homage to as well.
No, really.
Because this is the first appearance of Heisei Godzilla we get in his new form.
There's one scene specifically in the Matthew Broderick, and it's got really nothing to do with Godzilla. Oh, geez, this guy's huge.
Thick boy.
And we get the Cybot Godzilla head, which we'll get more into. We'll talk about what went into the making that head, because that's a really good looking Godzilla suit.
Man, we've gone so far. The original suit was made out of concrete.
Yeah,
and it weighed like 150 pounds
because Japan didn't have latex or
now
rubber.
We're getting latex and rubber.
Yeah,
there you go.
Wow, times have changed.
And the composition shots, like that looks like he's actually in frame. It's not like it looks really bad and they're hiding it with blue screen. Very well done.
Yeah. There's a scene in the Matthew Broderick Godzilla, and it's got really nothing to do with Godzilla. And I remember watching it as a kid. They're all fleeing from Godzilla, and one guy jumps into a taxi. And instead of hot wiring it, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure this is Godzilla. He just sticks a knife.
Yeah,
he just sticks a knife where the key should be. It just turns on the car.
That'll work.
That's not gonna work. That's not gonna work.
That is 100% Godzilla 1998. In a nutshell, guys,
right here.
That's the review of the film. Oh, what'd you think of 1998 Godzilla? The man stuck a knife in the key slot to start a car. That's my explanation of that movie. Jesus. I totally forgot about that scene too. That's truly awful.
This is like when I heard on like those videos where if you cut a hole in a tennis ball, you can like unlock someone's car with it. I'm like, you're an idiot. No, air cannot unlock a car. Like, that's not logical.
The only passing factor I'll give to 1998 Godzilla is that they hired the Simpsons actors for all the comedic roles, like Animal, the guy who plays Animal, the one guy, and the guy who plays the news head, the guy who runs the news program. They're both the main voice actors and the creators of The Simpsons.
Oh, really?
And even their secretary is the girl who plays Bart.
Nancy Cartwright.
Yeah. So all three of them are in there. So that's pretty cool. I did like that. It was the redeeming factor about that movie. And it always drove me crazy because I listened to the news reporter. I'm like, why does he sound so familiar? I'm like, oh, because he's the mayor of Springfield.
Yeah.
Duh. Jeez. So, oh my God, all the destruction. So this gets kind of where you're coming at, where you're like, why does he never consume nuclear energy? That's what he's going to do right now. Big boy's got to eat.
I just always assumed the main goal would be getting to somewhere that has nuclear energy, not just terrorizing some random city.
You might notice
or trying to butt hump a ride.
He's a lot
Godzilla
bigger.
Ride. Oh yeah, massive size.
So the reason with that is originally Godzilla was only 50 meters tall in the Showa series. And buildings got bigger, budget got bigger, so they were able to do higher level miniatures, more to scale than what they needed. Usually they do it at, I believe, a 25th scale. Now they did everything at quarter scale. So everything is quarter scale to what it would actually be, which is damn impressive. I would love to walk through one of these just as a person. Like walk through one of these places as a person and just like, brush my hand along a building and walk over a tree. Oh
Well,
hell
we all
yeah.
as kids have made Lego houses and went through them, or like cardboard houses.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You build up like in kindergarten, you used to have those wooden blocks and you could build like towers and stuff. And then, some kid would do work really hard on like this castle, and then I would run in and just destroy it all. And then I'd get in trouble and I'd go sit in the corner.
Be like, I was just playing Godzilla.
Yeah.
Godzilla though.
Apparently he's not a Godzilla fan. But when I was a kid and I was like, oh, I'm playing Godzilla, they went, who? So that was my life.
What is that?
Everyone was like, yo, Pokemon Dragon Ball Z. I'm like, yo, but like Mecha Godzilla, bro.
Like I said, I want to see Goku with the monkey form versus Godzilla.
Oh, and Vegeta goes full ape.
Yeah, because like
Yeah.
Goku could do it too before he cut off his tail.
Oh, that's right. But I'm not the biggest
weird
Dragon Ball
moment.
Z watcher, unfortunately. So.
I've noticed that you even in the because I checked out the show before, you've mentioned a couple DBZ references.
I love Dragon Ball. I'm
Yeah.
so into Dragon Ball, Yu-Gi-Oh, not so much as Pokemon.
This isn't even his final
Weird
form.
shows. Over 9,000 Raditz and shit. Oh god, Dragon Ball is so good. Majin Buu is becoming my knee tattoo. Just lots of pink.
So this is a funny scene. Godzilla's following birds.
Ooh,
This is
pretty.
a really weird angle. They kind of explain it more in depthly later on. It's still kind of a weak plot device, but it
Nah.
all shaped like me and Josh know this for sure. And Phil, I'm sure you know this from watching other movies. In Godzilla movies, everything happens for a reason. Everything matters. Like there'll be scenes where a girl's walking through the lab and she finds a pretty little wrap of wire and she's like, oh, this is a nice necklace, puts it on. That's a plot device. Later on, she uses that wire necklace to electrocute Godzilla back to life. So everything happens for a reason. There is no coincidence. So I'm sure Godzilla following those birds is going to come in handy later.
Who's just
So-
hungry?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe he just wants a little fried chicken. As we were watching that Godzilla, we noticed obviously he's shorter. So they increased Godzilla's size from 50 meters to 80 meters, as Josh was saying, because of buildings getting bigger and them wanting to make him more physically imposing as a creature. So it was funny. They originally asked the original composer, Ifukube, who did the original Godzilla theme and lots of Toho movies in the future and the past as well. They asked him if he could score this movie. And he gives one of the best responses in the world, like the most proper one. But he says, no, I don't do scores. I only do scores for 50-foot monsters, not 80-foot monsters. So almost is a pleasant way of declining it, but, not being totally douchey about it.
Well, he wouldn't be able to rate Jet Jaguar then.
Yeah. Oh my. That
Guy's
soundtrack is
wild.
legendary. That's wild. The true Ultraman ripoff.
So far, the most annoying one was the Mothra song.
Mothra. Yeah, actually, there's a good rendition in this Heisei series of it that you might like a little bit better because they were actually sung by two professional twins who did professional singing. And it's got a little more of an upbeat to it. They kind of kick up the pace a bit, make it a little more, a little jazzy. And there's one more difference to Godzilla, Josh. Did you catch it besides the height? What's different about him?
His snarl with his mouth, because like
Yeah,
that was
well, the
cool.
heads always change, that's for sure. But there's one really defining factor that changed about him.
I don't know. His tail's really chunky, and I don't like that part.
Yeah, his tail did get a lot longer. I agree. Actually,
it
that's
so
one I forgot
thick?
about. The big change in this Godzilla is he has 4 toes. In the
Oh,
Showa
how
series,
am I gonna
Godzilla
notice
always
that?
had 3 toes and was always a 3-toed monster. And also for the first time since I want to say it was before Son of Godzilla, so maybe before Ghidorah. So I'd say King Kong versus Godzilla suit design. It's the first time he has ears again. So they finally given ears back to him, so my man can hear again. That's nice.
He was gifted.
Oh, here we go. It's not a Godzilla film without a couple Geiger counters. Oh, I instantly, whenever I see a cave like this and they're doing smoke testing and stuff, I just think of Rodan instantly. And same with volcanoes. So look at that,
Rodan's
real shots.
Yeah. Rodan's another monster, right?
He is a pterodactyl,
Yeah,
basically.
Rodan was I'd say the big 3 Toho monsters. They all had their own movies before coming together, kind of like what created the Avengers gang up of Godzilla monsters. Was Mothra, Godzilla, and Rodan. Those are like the big three that were very successful. There's a couple others, like there's Dogora and there's Manda from Atragon, and they obviously have their rendition of King Kong.
I like
but
Ghidorah.
the main three, yeah, and Ghidorah unfortunately kind
Three-headed
of had his
dragon.
own movie, but he came into the movie with Godzilla, Rodan, and Mothra, so he was very much part of the Godzilla universe. He didn't really come in on his own, but he was definitely the main focus of that film, that's for sure.
Roughly how many kaijus?
Yeah.
How many kaijus are there?
So in the Toho series, there's probably at least, oh my god, it's hard because there's so many different, like, you know, for each kaiju, like
Here
there's
we
like
come,
5
Google.
different Godzillas. There's
Right.
like 4 different Mothras. So like if we're counting
Yeah.
all the different forms, let's do it.
Not so much the forms, just the
Overall
characters
design.
themselves.
Let's see. Because I know in the Showa series there was easily around 17, and then when the Heisei series hit, every film they introduced 1 or 2 new monsters every movie.
Homing instinct.
So here we have Japan obviously trying to figure out a way to deal with Godzilla before, like, they definitely expect America and Russia get involved. They're trying to deal with it on their own because we know what Russia and America are going to want to do to it. They're going to kill that son of a bitch. So Toho has a total of 39 monsters.
Wow.
Roughly, and that's includes some of the one, like Godzilla, Space Godzilla, Mecha Godzilla, because those are still separate things, not just different forms of themselves, because they're
Right.
completely different monsters. So that's including that, but not form changes. With form changes, we'd probably hitting around 45, 50.
Wow.
So they got quite a hefty amount, and Toho is very Disney. They hold on to what they got and they don't let anybody have it. Like even what they did with the new MonsterVerse movies, you know, they let America have the rights to Godzilla once, and that was with 1998 Godzilla, and that was obviously an embarrassment. We'll get into the end of the Heisei series. This was supposed to be the last series of Godzilla ever, and the 1998 Godzilla movie, they handed it off to the States to, you know, say carry on the legend because we don't really have the money or want to do these anymore, so, you know, give it a shot. And they did such a colossal failure and destroyed the brand so much that they brought Godzilla out of retirement and did a whole other Millennium series. And now they kind of have issues trusting. That's why they really had to yank and tear for Legendary Pictures to get the rights to do the newer ones we have. And part of it was because of Yoshimitsu Banno, who did Godzilla versus Hedorah, which is one of Josh's least favorite Godzilla movies. He was still around and he owned the rights technically at Godzilla because everyone else's rights had either expired or they had passed away. So he was like, yeah, sure, Legendary, give it a shot. And honestly, it was a good idea because they treated our man right in those movies. But
we need
already
to have Phil back on, and we need to make him watch Son of Godzilla.
Oh my god, poor man. We'll just give him a copy to watch, and so he can suffer in
just
silence.
watch it at home. You're gonna be like, what is this? Why?
So here comes a really important main fact, and a lot of this was cut out of the American edit, strictly because it shows Russia and America obviously on either side of the table, and then Japan's in the middle, and they're pretty much pressuring Japan into letting them use nuclear weapons on Godzilla because, you know, he's a risk, world risk at this point. So this is kind of like a UN meeting. So these are like the two representatives from the Prime Minister and President Force of Russia. So the reason this was taken out is because, one, Russia's super aggro, super aggressive, and you can kind of tell America's just kind of bending to their will. Like you'll see the Russians say this, and America's like, he's right. See, they're kind of making America look like the following dog, which, I mean, during the time they kind of were known to, you know, follow with the grain and then become more aggressive when needed. That was kind of their whole angle, you know, during the Cold War, because everyone was walking on eggshells during that time, right?
Right.
So, I mean, would have been really iffy to release this in 85 and have this angle in North American culture. So that's why they tend to cut a lot of it out. But I believe this is how Japan would have reacted in the Cold War crisis, with what they dealt with. And you can totally see them not wanting to side with the nuclear powers. They were kind of just, the kid in between the other, the mom in between the two kids fighting. And they're like, it's okay. Like, we'll figure this out. No need to, rip off your shirts and press bellies. Like, we're going to figure this out. And that's kind of the angle they're going at here.
It would be funny if you just said no.
Yeah, which is a brave move for the time. But you can tell that they're considering it, right? Because this is a huge threat, and they wouldn't be the ones launching the missiles. But if they're to launch these missiles, right, that means that the secrecy of it is broken, because they've had so much nuclear negligence and like trying to take it away from it being a military thing. And that's why Japan is very pro-nuclear with their energy, because they're trying to show that nuclears aren't used for weapons. They're used to help the world and help and better people's lives rather than ruin them. And that's kind of the whole angle of Japan's agreement, is they'd rather use nuclear weapons and energy for this option than using it for a defensive or offensive purpose, right?
Nuclear is risky no matter what you use it for.
Absolutely.
That's the downside. So like that's why the world has kind of gone towards like air power or solar power, just kind of anything else other than nuclear. Or at least in my mind, it's not beneficial.
Exactly. And you can see that a lot in modern day Japan too, right? They're starting
Clearly,
to
you
move away
watch
from
The Simpsons, my friend. Like you've seen it. Like
Japan's
not good, man. Chernobyl was a thing. Like I always go back to Chernobyl.
I mean, bro, go more recently.
There was a lot of disaster. You cannot now go to that land for like 1,000 years, even though people still do.
Yeah, it's
some risky business going on.
Yeah. I just like to point out that there's a lot of unfactual truth about Chernobyl. You can go to a lot of it still without getting hurt. And the proof of that is more of a modernized accident, because Chernobyl's kind of old at this point. In Japan, there's an earthquake which caused a nuclear meltdown, which is why they're moving away from nuclear energy in Japan, because, with where the plates are aligned there, they get a lot of earthquakes and tsunamis, and having something as touchy as nuclear reactors isn't good. And that's what happened at their, I think it was the early 2000s when the nuclear reactor went down and caused the huge flood of all that town. It had to be evacuated. And like, till this day, there's certain spots you can't go to there, but like a lot of it, you can still live around and be there, but they're starting to move to other forms of energy because of that issue they had. And the later movies like Shin Godzilla, the newest one, is a direct response to the nuclear energy crisis and the floodings and the earthquakes and how slow they were to react for like their rescuing operations and like their response to like huge disasters like that. And that was like a huge jab. Shin of Godzilla was a jab at their government and how unorganized they were. And that's why in Shin Godzilla, we'll get to it. There's a lot of like, let's do this. Okay, but first we have to have a meeting about it. And then they go have a meeting about it. And they're like, well, we don't agree. They're like, okay, well, let's have another meeting in 10 minutes. And then they sit and wait for 10 minutes. And then it cuts to everyone dying and getting injured and all this shit happening. And that's exactly what it's a huge push to. Yeah, exactly. And then they go back and have another meeting and being like, we have to have another meeting because we're wasting our time. Well, let's have a meeting about that. It's very much a jab. And Shin Godzilla is a good movie, by the way, folks. And if you haven't seen it, it's directed and co-written and written by the creator of Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is a pretty huge anime, super popular. It kind of translates very well over to Godzilla, his kind of creative style. It's a really dark, depressing satire, but it has little comedic elements spurted through. So yeah, we kind of blabbed through the whole interaction between Russia and America because we kind of know what it's about. Russia wants to get revenge because they took down their sub and they're like, we have to take this guy out, blah, blah. They've essentially taken step on our soil and hurt our people. So we're involved now. And America's like, yeah, you have to let them do that because we're going to be next. And Japan's like, we have to have a meeting. I don't know what to say right now. What? Japan having a meeting? See, I like that too, that it just shows Japan's not afraid to shy away from their own problems and solutions as well. While like when North America adapts these films, they take away all the stuff that makes North America look bad. But the Japanese versions keep even what makes Japan look a little bad as well. Like it's just the way things are. And that's what these movies reflect. And I find that when North America does these movies, they take a lot of that juicy realism plot that like grounds it in the world that we live in to kind of give it that blend. And it often makes the movies a lot more silly and a lot more like a monster movie than a disaster movie. So
I wonder if subconsciously, because they had like those, what the hell were they in space?
Satellites?
Yeah, they had the satellites for the Russian one, and then they had the States one. I wonder if Godzilla is supposed to be their nuclear weapon.
Yep. And you
Right?
know what?
Because
That could be
like
their,
they
like,
didn't have
defense.
one, so yeah, it's like that is our defense now that we're kind of used to it.
You can see that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, I would. And honestly, I bet you that's kind of how
Everyone else is prepared, but they aren't in that sense, or at least they didn't show it. And then I'm like, well, I mean, Godzilla's more scary than those satellites at this
fuck
point.
yeah. I feel like in 1985, the 1985 American version of this one, they kind of nail home a lot more at that concept because they're making it seem like a three-way fight essentially. Now, here is one awful change in the North American version. This is where our film might differ. If you're watching the North American version, we get our obviously leader who is at the meeting for the Russians. He's going up to the cargo ship, which is obviously a Russian ship. So in the North American version, they kind of make Russia look more aggro and look more aggressive. Like they're like, I don't care what you say. We're launching a nuke at this bastard. And that's how it's going to happen. And that's kind of how it's viewed in the North American version. While in this one, everything that happens is more treated as an accident and it was kind of not meant to happen. So it's almost like they were careless with their power rather than just being aggressive and doing it without say. And I feel like that's because North America and Russia had a lot of tension and they didn't want to put a movie out under their film company saying that, Russia was just willy-nilly and not caring. You know what I mean? Like making it not as serious. Didn't want to cause any waves, I feel like. And kudos to this film for putting that kind of like plot device and relevance to real world problems during such a serious issue as the Cold War. Because the Cold War could have went a different way.
Yeah.
And that's
they've been trying to do that for the past few films, like with toxic waste being leaked into water or like pollution, whatever it may be. They've been really trying to go political with the Godzilla movies.
Yeah. But I mean, if they released this version of this film unchanged in North America, like some of the scenes in this movie could have very well been the driving force that pressured Russia to just nuke the fucking world. And then bye world.
No more Godzilla movies.
Yeah, no more anything. We would have had actual life Godzilla instead.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, guys. Time machine? No.
Nah, I'm out.
No, yeah, definitely not.
You can have Japan at that time. I'm staying in Canada.
Well, I mean, there probably wouldn't be Canada. We're really close to the state's border. We would have been
our
done
only
first.
Kaiju right now is Trudeau.
And technically, and during the Cold War time, we were definitely allied with America, so we would have been the target for sure.
Oh, most likely. And if like the state's gonna fight, usually Canada's a part of it, which is okay, I guess.
Nothing annoys me more than at this lab here, our professor biologist. You notice these awful sounds they've got going? They're just like scrabbled bird noises. It sounds like a tattoo machine at some points. Like it's like, whoa. And it always drives me nuts. And I guess
Did you notice that they had a guitar cab in the background?
I mean, yeah, you gotta have a little jam sesh when you're chilling there, right?
Just a little guitar cab, just chilling.
Screeching guitars, trying to make a sound that'll attract Godzilla. Sometimes Godzilla likes a little rock and roll, Godzilla only prefers Marshall and Orange amplifiers. He wants you to spend those big bucks.
Favorite band is Pillars of Autumn.
Yeah. God, pick something better, bro.
What, like Sinner?
Exactly. Hey, I'm rocking that shirt today, actually.
Full circle.
Oh, right on.
Rocking the sloth shirt today.
There you go. I love that.
Instant fave.
Design.
Still always think of Rodan when I see that pit. Oh, Rodan's badass. One of the most underrated kaiju. Rodan and Anguirus are like the two most underrated kaiju.
I like Anguirus. Rodan's just boring.
We get to see Rodan in the Heisei series, but Anguirus, as we talked about in Godzilla vs. Mecha G, he takes a 30-year rest. We don't get to see him for 30 years. He doesn't come back till Godzilla Final Wars in 2009, I think. In 2009, 8. So he's put to rest for a long time, but he comes back swinging. That is a badoom when you see Final Wars. He's
I'm really excited
swinging.
about the Godzilla 2000 or whatever movie, the one with Matthew Broderick.
Oh,
like, I've never seen it. And I'm like, now I want to watch that 98. I want to watch him stab the fucking car thing.
Godzilla 2000s is a real film, though, and it's great. And ironically,
is it?
It always gets confused with 1998 Godzilla because technically Godzilla 2000 came out in 1999. And it was called Godzilla 2000, and it also got a North American release in theaters. So we got a Godzilla movie a year after another in North America, which was like a mind-blowing thing. And it was funny because the 1998 Godzilla was so popular and like everyone went to see it because it was such a well promoted thing. Like they had signs in Manhattan, that would hang and be like, he's bigger than this sign and longer than this bus and stuff like that. So
Green Day's on their soundtrack. So I mean,
yeah,
It's definitely a
exactly.
banger.
And what's the other? I think it's is it P. Diddy and Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. They do the Come With Me and it's like Kashmir remixed.
Weird.
A lot of money got dumped in that movie.
Oh yeah, and
Matthew
a lot of movie was
Broderick.
lost from that movie. Trust me, I own almost every single toy from that movie, and they're all worth chimp change still. I think they're worth less than when I bought them.
The only thing I know about that movie is that if it's the VHS copy, you have that weird 3D print on the copy cover of
Yeah.
it. That was pretty cool.
I know, because as a kid, no matter how bad it was Godzilla, so I still watched it, and I that was another tape I wore out, and I had to buy another one.
This is like the Cult of Chucky. It's a terrible movie, but I bought it.
Yeah.
I still own it.
Well, like we were saying too, right? There wasn't a lot of movies you could buy in North America of Godzilla. He really didn't start getting distribution until 1995 and onward. And that was of like the early ones and only certain ones they wanted you to see. And then late 2000s,
So
early
clearly
2000s.
not the Bono one.
No, that one was in a lot in
Bono-
like the
Bono's
Disney
in
one.
one?
Kind of.
there-
It has to do about world issues and pollution, so maybe.
He's a director, and I kept making that joke too.
His
name's
like,
Yoshimitsu Banno,
And
yeah.
of course, he'd want to make like political
Or
views
Banno.
and
It's
stuff like that.
Banno.
Bono?
No.
Bono?
So in American, you'd say Bano, but in Japanese, because they're 2 letters per syllable and per enunciation, so it's Bono. So here we kind of get the
Bono.
Russians issue. So Godzilla's obviously attacking this. He's coming ashore essentially, but this Russian ship is at bay because obviously they're not going to let the Russians stay aboard land.
Some good miniatures.
So here we get the Japanese version. Again, for those watching the North American version, this is what's cut. So what we get is the room that controls the nuclear missiles from the satellite is obviously getting destroyed. So the missile that launches is by accident in this version. The Russians get attacked and the nuke gets launched by accident, essentially with it being Godzilla's fault. Well, in the North American one, they see Godzilla coming to land and they're like, Japan still doesn't have an answer. And they're like, we don't care. We're launching this anyway. And then they launch the nuke. That's how it happens in the North American version, essentially.
WW3.
Yeah. Essentially. So I definitely like this version a lot better. It makes it more Godzilla as the enemy, not Russia just being douchey and launching a nuke at him.
Now, what if you just stab him with a knife?
We covered that. Remember in Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla? He gets shot with the drill bombs
Shout
and
out
he
to
just
Jill.
flexes like Neo style and just shoots them all out of him like nothing. Oh, there's a really good destruction scene there.
Can you
That's all
imagine making like a
miniature.
belt out of Godzilla flesh? Be like a giant alligator. It'd sell for millions.
How much money do you think that guy got paid to get caught on
Yeah.
fire like that? Probably
That
not a
was
lot.
Really on fire.
Yeah.
Just lube him up with Vaseline, light him on fire, kick him into the water after.
So with his mouth opening there and us getting a good face shot now's the perfect time to talk about what was the main promotional run for this movie. So obviously later on the 1976 Godzilla that didn't do that well, they built a massive life-size Kong animatronic for that movie. And that was how they marketed King Kong. They're like, yeah, this movie, but it's a real King Kong. And they would like bring it to the premieres and like display him on the back of a transport truck and everything. And ironically, they spent, I think it was $3 million on him, just the animatronic alone. And
Wow.
they filmed him for 2.5 seconds and then it started leaking and it caught fire. So when they did the film, so they had to obviously fix it up and then they used it for promotional reasons, but it was never really used in the film. But that was kind of how they promoted it. They're like, we have a real life size Kong, blah, 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 blah. And, it got all the attention in the media. They're like, this is the biggest animatronic ever built and all this jazz. So in this movie, they used pretty much a life to scale Cybot Godzilla head. So they completely made the head out of animatronics. And it had like different facial expressions. It could roll its lips, move its eyes, close its eyes, move full 360 degrees. And essentially they do a lot of this is suit for sure. This is all suit,
Mhm.
but the close-up shots where you really see the mouth moving is all Cybot Godzilla, which is
Makes
really
me think
cool.
of Child's Play. Like how they used
Yep.
to do like the Child's Play dolls, like with Chucky, and it was just like animatronics
concept,
underneath just for
100%.
facial.
So I mean, we talked a lot about it in the Showa series. So
Also, I think there's KFC in the background. Product
there's
placement.
there's wait till you see the North American version. It's Dr. Pepper all over the place. Because Dr. Pepper was the company that did all the funding. I like that he blows up one car and all these cars just explode one after another. That's not how it happens, but I respect the visualness of it. It's cool. Yeah, Dr. Pepper product placement all over. So much, in fact, in the North American version, when Raymond Burr was playing Mr. Martin, they actually wanted him to take a pause and drink a sip of a Dr. Pepper. And
in the Godzilla suit.
Yeah. No. And just in the movie, bro, like while he was discussing the problem with Godzilla, just randomly crack a Dr. Pepper and drink it. And the guy was like, the director was like, oh, you're gonna have to ask Raymond Burr. And when the guy told the Dr. Pepper representative, asked Raymond Burr about it, he's like, can you just take this sip? He just looked at him in disgust and walked away. Just didn't do it. And he refused to do it.
That's great.
So I believe in this shot, this is obviously an homage to the original Gojira when he picks up the train. But if you look closely, I'm not sure if it's in this edit or the North American one, but there's actually an advertisement for Ghostbusters. If you look off to the right, I think when he does the other shot, this is a really cool shot too. Similar to the original. Very much if you've seen the original Gojira. I like the one guy looks super happy though. Right there. He's just smiling. I always wondered about that. I'm like, did he just not know what he was filming, or is because he's wearing like a robe and a hat? Maybe he's one of those doomsday predictors, and he was just really happy that the world was coming to an end, and he was finally dying.
Happening.
Yeah, maybe he's had a rough day at the office. I don't know.
I like the reflection in the windows of the building.
Super interesting about that.
Adds the depth to it.
Yeah. So one of something really funny about that. So the original suit actor for this movie, honestly, his name doesn't even matter because he's an idiot. Last minute, he walked out and didn't want to do it. Totally changed his mind. He took one step in the suit and went, oh no, I can't do this. Too claustrophobic, and just walked out on the project. So they went, well, shit, we're about to start filming. Who's going to play Godzilla? So they go back to our only Kenpachiro Satsuma. Played a ton of the villains in the Showa series. He played Gigan. He played, oh God, who else did he play? He's mainly known for playing Gigan twice. He played Hedorah in his first appearance, which because Phil wasn't around for that one, we'll give a little cool fun fact flashback. In Godzilla versus Hedorah, it was one of the heaviest suits because it was made out of blankets and concrete, and it was so heavy that they actually had to have wires holding up the suit while he moved because he couldn't stand on his own. And while he was in the suit, he came down with appendicitis.
Oh wow.
And they couldn't get him out of the suit to perform surgery, so they had to perform surgery in this gross, nasty, polluted suit. And they actually did the surgery with him in the suit. And on that day, he found out that the painkillers they had prescribed to him did not work. So he was live awake in a Hedorah Godzilla suit with surgery being performed on him. And he came back to do more. That man is a trooper.
That's intense.
So they asked him to come do this one, and he was like, oh, hell yeah. So he came in, but the suit had already been built for the other actor, and he was, I think, 4 inches taller than Kenpachiro. So that's a significant jump when you're in a to-fit suit. So he had a lot of space and movement in the suit, right? So he actually fell into that shiny reflective building during filming, and they had to rebuild it. Yeah. And the poor guy, he passed out a couple times I think he passed out once in the suit while filming this one, and he lost 12 pounds after filming the scene.
Wow.
Yeah, just from being in the suit. Yeah, exactly. Suit actors just, I mean, there's some real horror. That's a shot that didn't age well right there. No. There's a few of them, but some of them are really good.
Or a good role for COVID bodies afterwards. Everyone just play Godzilla.
Oh my God.
COVID weight is gone.
So I forgot, lost my train of thought. I just got distracted with that really awkward composited shot with Godzilla's foot. I like when they composite the real life people in the miniatures. They do that a couple times in this movie, and that's another one that doesn't age that well. But other than that, it's all pretty damn good. I will say one thing though, miniature work, especially in these movies, just can't be touched. Like that whole city looks real. Yeah, from that scene there, and it's completely miniature. This is our comic relief character of the movie, by the way, folks, if you can't tell already by the look of him. Now, everyone always wondered why he was so weird. He was actually a popular comedian at the time. He did a lot of practical physical comedy, kind of Josh flying back to King Kong versus Godzilla when they got the one comedian. He was kind of like the Japanese Charlie Chaplin of the time to play Taco. who
I
was
was gonna
our
say Taco.
Taco. He played our pharmaceutical representative and who wanted to kidnap King Kong, and that's what started the whole battle in that movie. So this is the same idea. They just got a comedic character who was popular in media at the time to play a little funny character here. That don't go walking around like it's your place, you bastard. And I imagine too what he says is a lot funnier, but when it's translated over, there's lots of like certain words and slang that just isn't funny in North American culture, but because some of it sounds a little dry later on, but some of his stuff really hits. It's funny. Also, this is like one of the first times, I mean, we see it kind of briefly in the Showa era, but in the Heisei, they do a lot of people connecting with Godzilla. Like we had like a couple people like love Godzilla and maybe have telepathic connections with him, but you'll see a lot in this one where Godzilla recognizes a person actually being there. Like he's not just looking at like an insect, like he's looking at you. And that really is start to done with in the Heisei series. And for better or for worse, I like it. In this one, it's a little weird because these are just people. They don't really matter. But in the later Heisei ones where there's people of significance to Godzilla, it makes a little more sense. Oh, look at the eye turn there. I love how the eyes turn on this costume. Like as he turned, he like looked at the camera out of the corner of his eye and turned. Cool shot. So that would be Cybot Godzilla, obviously, because we didn't see too much movement. I still kudos to Ken Pachiro though for doing it. And I think that's what, because obviously in the Showa Godzilla movies, he was always very like fast moving and he kind of like wobbled a little more and like ran kind of silly like. And this one, he moves a lot slower and he's a lot more like cumbersome with his movements. Like he takes big steps. And I think that's to do with Ken Pachiro having to lift his leg up really high because the suit was too small for his knees to hit the braces to lift the legs.
Right.
Which kind of like really defined the walk of Godzilla. And even when in the newer movies, because he plays Godzilla in every single Heisei movie going forward, which is funny because he stumbled into this role by accident in a way. The suit was built to his size and he still walks the same way. So people liked it so much that, and it gave him that source that he looked like he was heavier in movement. So he really adapted that and kept it going throughout the series, which I really like. And they call it kind of the Ken Pachiro walk. Every Godzilla suit actor is famous for something. Like Nakajima, the original in the Showa series, is known for his fighting style and how he's really hands-on with the monsters. Ken Pachiro is really known for his movement and how he walks and makes Godzilla look very big and something of like menace that like weights down on the world kind of. And then the newer suit actor who we'll get to in the Millennium Era definitely has his own tropes that I don't want to get into too much before watching them, for Josh, especially because it would spoil quite a lot to do with the plot, but we'll definitely touch upon his more. But every suit actor, like there's the big three, and they each played a significant amount of the movies. Nakajima in Showa, Ken Pachiro in Heisei, and then our suit actor for the Millennium series as well, who I'm a little more unfamiliar with because for better or for worse, I'm not the biggest Millennium fan. I do like them, and those are some of the films I actually got to see right on DVD release because they were out in North America because it was like in 2005 and 6. But I remember when Godzilla 2000 came to North American theaters and my parents took me to see it and I was happy as hell. And I remember looking over at everyone else in the theater who was just like, you know, your average movie viewer. And they were like, what the fuck is this? And I'm like, this is Godzilla.
I paid $10 to go see this.
They're like, I want to go see 98 again.
Yeah. Where's Matthew Broderick? Did they give anything out? When you saw that movie?
No, I wish, because a lot of movies did that back then. Like a 98 Godzilla gave away cups and stuff. Like yeah. No, Star Godzilla Wars 2000, I feel like was like last minute shoved it to North America release because they're like, well, 98 Godzilla came out and we're making this movie to kind of fix the continuity. So they kind of released it in North America just so they could be like, this is Godzilla, not this other abomination.
Right.
But North American average moviegoers who didn't know about Godzilla just saw that because at the time period, the only people who really knew Godzilla in North America were from word of mouth reference. Like he was referenced in media, like in Austin Powers and a lot of movies during that era. So they either knew him from that or it was older generation people who saw the original Godzilla King of the Monsters with Raymond Burr, which was the original Gojira that was reimposed in 1956, 57. So that was usually the only movies that North American viewers have had any like view in or knew anything about, because these movies you literally had to get off eBay or get them shipped to a PO box from Japan or have someone pick it up for you at a movie store. because Japan, you couldn't just, there wasn't like Amazon or anything like that where they would sell to third-party developers. You had to buy them from a store in Japan.
That's crazy.
So you really couldn't, like, That's Entertainment was a local video store in our little town of St. Catharines down here, guys. And that was one place that they were really passionate about films. So they had a few of them. Like, I got VHS versions of Godzilla versus Megalon and Mechagodzilla, I think in 99 from them, used on VHS, but they were still Japanese, not English. So you couldn't really know what was going on. And they cost quite the pretty penny back then. I think my mom paid $20 each for them, which was a lot of money for a VHS tape.
Yeah.
In 99, that was like spending $60 on a DVD these days.
Yeah.
So kudos to my mom there. A little shout out. Oh, Godzilla's smoking here. So with the stuff coming out of his mouth and the smoke here, Ken Pachiro, that's actually him in the suit when that happens. So that was one of the reasons he almost passed out. He has in Godzilla versus Destoroyah, which is the last film in this series, he has another moment where the suit filled with carbon dioxide, and he passed out in the suit as well, and they almost didn't get him out in time to catch his breath.
Wow.
So guy's been through a lot, that's for sure. And then that shot of the far back, that's Cybot. As you can tell, he's moving very electronically and the chest is moving. I like that they show that, though, to show that his heart's kind of stopping, like his breathing's slowing down.
Yeah.
Because they've launched him with
like a tranquilizer.
Yeah, it's like freezing bomb, essentially. So it's like freezing his insides to stop his heart.
Or
obviously,
it'll work.
The Russian countdown, now that Nuke's still counting down because he's still dead. And here we get the nuclear launch. So this is now went from a Godzilla movie to a full-out disaster action flick. We now have Godzilla destroying Tokyo, and there's a nuclear missile on its way. What are we going to do, folks?
Run away.
Right? Like, are we going to... There's no way we're going to see actual nuclear fallout in a movie in Japan. That's just a big no-no. I think the only time we ever get that is the original film when they talk about how Godzilla was created. And we get a bomb dropped, not even a bomb dropped, but in the Millennium series, there's a scene where they amped up Godzilla because it was a one-off movie. He uses atomic breath and it makes a mushroom cloud. I think that's about as close as we get. And at that point, it's very much Godzilla being the bomb, not an actual missile being dropped. I think this is the last time nuclear weapons really make a visual appearance in these movies. I imagine because they got a lot of shit for it.
Yeah, I imagine so.
Especially after the Cold War. Yeah, they got 30 minutes. And at this point, like any other movie, I'd normally hit the timer and be like, all right, let's check your continuity. In 30 minutes, if that bomb drops, it's more than 30 minutes. You're all a bunch of liars, or your scientists suck, one or the other. But if I look at our clock here, we have exactly 30 minutes left.
Oh,
so that's pretty continuity heavy, I'd say.
Yeah, I would say so.
It's like, as we call the ticking clock. I hate that term, but it's true.
Ticking time bomb.
Yeah. So, I mean, we kind of glazed over it, but this ship here is
looks like a Dragon Ball Z capsule.
You know what it looks like to me? It looks like the sea louse from the beginning of the movie, but mechanized.
Oh, a little bit.
I wonder if that's
Mecha
like just
sea louse.
they just coated it in metal and then used the same puppetry.
Yeah, they just repurposed the prop.
Yeah,
or
why
they just
not?
took
Save
off
some
the
money.
weird flesh skin from it, and that was what was underneath.
Yeah,
Like a Furby.
it looks kind of just like a metal turd, realistically. But
Yeah.
it is called the Super X.
So
And,
basically the smog monster.
Yeah, no, goddamn. Hedorah cannot die. You rip out his balls and he still lives. Okay. So I do like how this pretty much every Godzilla film, and Josh knows it for sure, but we'll talk about it for those who aren't watching it for Phil too as well. Every Godzilla movie, when it hits the 30 minutes left mark, you get 10 minutes of climax, and then the last 20 minutes is monster action. Every time without fail. So like if you go back and rewatch these movies, a lot of people just skip an hour in and then just watch the last 30 minutes because you're like, yeah, I know the context. This is the ultimate Godzilla nap. Yeah, this looks like a good place to sleep. I'm just gonna lay right here. Yeah.
Sleepy boy.
Another really funny fact I gotta point out. So for this scene, obviously Ken Pachiro had to be in the suit for it to fall in, so it had the weight to break the miniature. And they couldn't move him because they wanted to keep continuity. So he just laid in the suit. for like 20 minutes for them to get all the composite shots they wanted. And then they're like, all right, we're good. Now you can get back up again. And then they had to rip them out without knocking the building over. Super funny. Because, you know, one slip up, that building goes down. That's costing you thousands of dollars to rebuild that model.
Probably a good little break for him, though.
Not really. You're sitting in a big sweaty rubber suit. But
it's better than moving around.
Because a lot of the times you're stuck in that suit for a long time. So, you know, if you had to go, you went.
Duct tape water bottle to your leg.
That's why people are like, oh, I'd love to be in like, because, you know, obviously the water scenes, they're just giant pools, you know, big tubs, essentially, the Toho tubs, just like filled with water. Yeah, it's filled with blood and pollution and used firework and gunpowder and urine. That's what that water is filled with, essentially. Not too much, probably not too different from the actual oceans. But,
I was just gonna say, yeah, that's the ocean for you.
So, and I always applaud the water scenes because I'm obviously scared of drowning in water, and I couldn't imagine being in those suits because they're not waterproof. So, like when they're like waist deep, they're filled up in the suit waist deep with water. Yeah. So the scenes when they get knocked over and their whole suit goes under, that suit starts filling up with water. You're in there. You're locked in that thing.
Then we go back to the concrete suit with the first one, concrete and blankets, and then you go under. I'm like, oh, joy. So let's go through all Ken Pachiro's injuries while we're about to see an injury here. No knife into the lock?
No, this isn't America. But he's an idiot.
Knife.
Why was he trying to drill a star bit? Such a dumbass. You could have just fucking reversed it and used the chip end and then just turned it out like a screw, but you know, whatever. Had to have someone get injured and have her caring for him. That's just how it goes. And I don't really like they try and do a romance connection with the guy who saved her brother and obviously her. And I feel like this is the weakest Godzilla romance we've gotten. Exactly. 100% unneeded. There's some that are needed and some that are good. This one's neither. I also like that this is an emergency helicopter. So it says A on the side.
Yeah.
It wouldn't say A. They don't know what that word means. Why would it say A? The Japanese writing? Oh, hell yeah. Not A. There's another composited shot on a miniature there. Yeah. Which I never got because they actually shot a helicopter on scene. Would it have really been that hard for them just to stand in the window and wave from the building?
Yeah.
Like that's the shot there. Oh God, maybe they were just trying different special effects techniques. They're like, yeah, we'll give it a shot and try it out. And it just didn't work. So a little warning though, we always give warnings when there's any kind of trigger scenes. This scene has quite a little bit of a height trigger. So if you're afraid of heights, this scene might make you feel a little queasy. This next section here. I don't like heights. I can handle it, but that's only because I've seen it, you know, millions of times and probably threw up the first time I watched it. So anytime there's an obsessive amount of blood as a kid or heights, I was just puke on the floor. That was it for me. Even in Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, Josh can recall when the imposter Godzilla breaks Anguirus's jaw and there's like Play-Doh blood that pours out. I saw that, went to the bathroom, threw up right away, but I didn't want to tell my parents Play-Doh. Because they wouldn't let me watch it if I told them. So I just kept hush about it. Oh, I mean, it totally works. Like that's a good way of like, that was validly used back then, but there's a lot safer ways to do that now. That's scary as hell. You just put your arms in, hope for the best. God forbid if you get a head itch, you're dead.
Yeah.
You slip right out of there like a slip and slide. So we're getting kind of close. We have a rough idea on how the movie feels. So now we do a really fun thing we started doing about halfway through the Showa series where we guess the Rotten Tomato score on these beautiful, wonderful movies. Josh, what do you think? Now, this 72. This one's for 1985. So this is for the American version because they actually didn't write the 84 version. So what do you think the 85 version of this movie got? So with all 72. The good scenes taken out. 72? You're going with 72? Phil, what do you think?
Yeah.
I'm gonna give. Does it have both like a rater view and like the critic?
Yeah, we're going for critic because audience score is always pretty good on these because G fans are crazy. So the critic score for this bad boy.
It's the critic score on this. I'm gonna give it. You said 72. That's a good answer.
Price is right. I'm say 73. No.
Yeah,
73.50.
Yeah.
Fuck.
I'd say maybe 74.
20%.
Fuck.
How
really
bad? Yeah.
Every time I guess, I'm always wrong. Every time. And I'm like, man, I feel like I got this good, like, and then you're like, no. And I'm like, shit.
No. Yeah. And I mean, this is like, they were a little easier on the Showa ones because they were made in like the 70s and the 60s and 50s, but this is an 80s film. So like, think about the movies that have come out. Like, we've already gotten technically Gremlins, we've gotten Ghostbusters, we've gotten
Indiana Jones.
Yeah, Star Wars is like finished at this point. Like, and this is the movie we get here. So like, I can see why they rated it so low. Like, the audience is 66, which is more believable.
Some of them that they have made.
I know. Son of Godzilla has like a 72 or a 40 something. And that's
It's
like the
literally a
worst
Boglin,
movie.
Which I assume you know what it is.
Yeah.
It's a Boglin. It's not a good one.
Yeah, 60% is what Tomato Meter it got, but it has an audience score of 30. So
See, that sounds about right.
the second highest one is obviously Gojira, which is the original. The original Gojira has let me check really quickly here.
92.
Raymond Burr, 1956, because they only have the American one. 83% is what the original very first Godzilla has. The second highest is Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, from what we've watched anyway, which is 75%. And then the rest of them kind of hover around 40, from like 20 to 40%.
What's the 98 one?
I think it's 2. It's real low. Oh my God, does it not even have a rating? Do they just not even bother?
It's just that bad.
15%.
Wow, I don't even know if I've ever looked up any movie that's got a rating of 15%.
So you know what's shocking though, and I gotta
Ginger
point it
Dead
out.
Man, it doesn't even have a rating.
So the next Godzilla that we'll watch after this, which is my personal like easy top 3 favorite out of all of them, is Godzilla versus Biollante. And it's one of the most unseen Godzilla films because it never got a North American release. It only got one by Miramax. And it was right before Miramax went out of business and was bought out. So they released maybe for a year and then they wiped it from shelves and it was impossible to get. So it really wasn't viewed in North America a lot. So it's pretty much the most unseen film, but it was also the highest budgeted Godzilla film of all time till today. So
Miramax
it's pretty
also
great.
put out Jay and Silent Bob.
Yes, they did. Yeah, absolutely. And they Clerks and all the Kevin Smith films. Yeah, which is so funny. And then they have Godzilla versus Biollante. Oh yeah, we'll be watching Tusk for sure.
Oh, you guys are gonna watch Tusk?
We're doing horror movies as well, so
That's
Tusk eventually will come up.
I know what it's about. I haven't seen it.
Oh, buddy boy.
We'll have you on for Tusk.
It's got Justin Long too.
Yeah.
Basically gets kidnapped and forced to be like,
Yeah.
and right at the end, it's just like Kevin Smith. And I didn't know that when I watched this, so I was prepared and I was like, wow.
Sorry, I was gonna interrupt you. Did you see that massive like block there where they looked at each other like it was a kiss moment? And then she just hugs him. Instead. Oof.
You're covered in blood.
So I gotta point this out though. Every time we bring up Rotten Tomatoes, I bring it up though. There is one Godzilla film, one that actually has 100%.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I gotta point out. So the way they took out the Russian nuke was by launching a missile at the nuke in space. Like, there would cause like massive radiation clouds and rain, and like it would cause so much damage. I mean, better than it landing.
But
But
they could
like
have solved that with space titanium.
they could have space titanium air shields. You know, if that nuke was made out of space titanium, wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
And why you ask? Because what's stronger than titanium? Space titanium.
Space titanium.
Welcome to the Mecha Godzilla world.
I like the fact that they blow it up though, because they keep the continuity. Now the sky looks red, and it gives it kind of this evil red kind of like visual stature over the film for the remaining climax. So it's kind of cool. It was a nice little visual touch to make the film different and keep the continuity of the nuke exploding in space. Obviously,
Everything would be toxic though.
yeah, exactly.
You'd have
Everyone would
like
be
nuclear
dying.
waste like raining down on people.
Godzilla's getting juiced up with his nuclear steroid air, and like comes Super Godzilla, and the game over. No, that's not what happens. I wish. Sorry, spoiler, it doesn't happen. But yeah, so there is one Godzilla that has 100%, which is pretty impressive because you think of like the best movies of like our generation that we remember, like that came out, like The Dark Knight is like an
Grease.
obvious one,
Oh.
right? The Dark Knight is one of the most highly achieved films of all time, and that has a Rotten Tomatoes score of soon as I find it here. It's pretty high. Like it's a 94. So it's certified fresh. Rotten Tomatoes 94%. But there is a Godzilla movie with 100%, and it is in this series. Oh, here we get that Jason Lives kind of Godzilla awakening Frankenstein. See it in the eye. Cool as hell shot though, as funny as it is.
Yeah, that's super cool.
So yeah, the last film in the Heisei series, which was meant to be the last Godzilla film of all time before obviously 1998 happened, was Godzilla versus Destroyer, and it has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 100%.
Wow.
There's only like 13 movies on Rotten Tomatoes that have 100%.
Yeah.
And it's one of them. I can't wait to get to that one. That's my personal favorite Godzilla movie of all time. So we'll get to it. I think it's 6 films away from this one. So there's only 7 films in the Heisei series. But when people say Godzilla, this is the series they talk about. Like the Showa ones are goofy and fun and like they're a good time. But if you want serious Godzilla, this is the series you'll watch. Because even the newer Millennium ones are super silly and they use a lot of CGI and they just weren't ready for that yet. It's kind of laughable at some points. So obviously now, as Godzilla still being the enemy, they've kind of tackled the nuclear problems. Now it's kind of just sweeping up the mess now. So now they're going to have to really take out Godzilla because clearly he's up and ready to fight because that
or attempt
nuclear lightning zapped him and gave him his juice to wake up. You know, Zeus decided, hey, bitch, time to get up, and just whipped a lightning bolt right at his eye. And he's like, time to go. Blows a hole right through the building. And if y'all watch the 1998 Godzilla, there actually is a nice homage to this scene when Godzilla runs through the building and the helicopters are shining their lights through the hole in the building. That's totally an homage from this film. They tried to come back and they ruined it though, because guess what? Godzilla doesn't have atomic breath in that movie because it's not fucking Godzilla. Rant over. But I think this is like the best way Godzilla dispatches everything in this movie, because he tends to use a lot of like physical fighting. Like he like knocks buildings over, and yeah, he uses the atomic breath, but yeah. Well, that's the joke kind of comedic nickname for the Heisei series. They call it the Beam Blast series because Ken Pachiro wasn't really a physical fighter. He liked more of the stature of Godzilla, and that's kind of what they went for. So a lot of the fights from now on between monsters are a lot of just shooting beams at each other and big explosions. It's not a lot of physical fighting, which a lot of fans hate, but I personally like it because I feel like the Showa series is that for that reason, but we don't get a lot of beam clashing and stuff. You know, that's what these films are for.
If it's used properly, it works. It's just like in the one with Ghidorah, the lightning kind of looked a little cheesy, but
yeah,
it got to the point. Just jump down the hole.
Right. I laugh at this part. I'm just like, why are you so scared? There's stairwells at normal apartment buildings that look fucking worse than that where we live, and we still have to go up and down them every day. Like, welcome yeah, I was walking home from as you know, I was leaving home today, and I went to go down the stairs, and half the stairwell fell down, and there's just like you have to jump over it a little bit. They're like, we'll get to it. That's what the other, you know, the seaside of the building looks like too. We'll wait till they all kind of get debris, and then we'll have someone come in and fix it all. They never get fixed. So, God, our roads are worse looking than that stairwell here. Like, goddamn. Is it an Axe Effects? No, Kemper.
I was just about to say that. He's Kemper. They're ready to record.
No, yeah. I was going to say it's just an amplifier.
Setting up. Starts turning knobs.
Yeah.
Okay, go. Okay.
I did like that you point out, Josh, too, that his tail was a lot bigger. Oh,
it just looks chunky and weird.
I forgot about the Godzilla foot. That's the other big prop for this movie. So on top of Cybot Godzilla, they made a life-size replica of Godzilla's foot for scenes when it crushes cars in that building right there. That's a real foot next to those people.
I would have just made like a hand puppet and then just used your arm.
Nope. Everything's bigger. It's got to be real. Remember, like in the older Godzilla movies, when they were so crushed on budget, they were coming with all these cool, creative ways to do things. This is the definition of when this and the next movie are the definition of when Godzilla has too much money. They get silly with it. Where did that water come from? That wasn't there a minute ago. Oh, it's because he took the hose off. Okay. All right. He got me. I get it. Me trying to call him out. Oh, look at, we get our comedian character. Yeah, he's not gonna help you. he was thieving. He looks a little drunk too. He's wobbling a lot.
Well, he did drink some of that cognac.
That's true. Yeah, he was going heavy into that shit. Cursing out
You
Godzilla.
go first, trying to throw your girlfriend out. You go.
No, you go.
You go first.
Well, I mean, he's sending her down first because,
Got to test the weight.
Yeah, I mean that. Godzilla
All
foot.
right, back up.
There's the
Back
foot,
up.
Yeah. I
like the
recommend
shot,
Dr.
though.
Scholl's.
Yeah. Zilla-sized.
And the drunk dude's just like down there being like, hurry the fuck up, man.
Yeah, he's like, I got liquor to drink. Oh, we got that awful. It does sound like a
Places to
tattoo
be.
machine.
Oh, I
Is
kind of like it.
Yeah, it's all I think of. So I don't know if
That's some
we
shading right
we kind of
there.
maybe would have talked over it a little bit when we were talking earlier. I just want to make sure we all have it fresh in the mind. They talked about the makeup of Godzilla and how he's one regenerative. So that's why, because technically this is the kind of like the Halloween movies. This now erases all of the Showa continuity and it just pretends like the first film happened and they kill Godzilla and that's it. And now it's this one. But
Yeah,
they said
H2O.
that this Godzilla is the same Godzilla that got killed in Gojira. And their explanation for this is that he has G1 regenerative cells. So it took, 40 some odd years for him to regenerate and become Godzilla again from bones, essentially. So even if you chop off his arm, rip out his heart, if you let him sit, as long as he has some sort of material, he will grow back. And this is how we get rid of the Super X. Boom! Drops a fucking building on them. Love it. And that's a world famous shot of Godzilla right there.
Menacing.
Yep.
All right, my work here is done.
Yep, exactly. I killed the Super X, which is now the
Nap
crushed
time.
X. So when they were talking about his genetic makeup, they obviously, said that he was the original Gojira, but rebuilt essentially from his regenerative factors, which is why he hadn't attacked in so long. And the other side of it is that they discovered that he kind of has this lining in his spinal cord. It's like a North Pole because his mass is so large. So that explains why he was, going with the birds because, he's falling with them to kind of migrate. Like he's literally a living pole, like North Pole, essentially. So
Interesting.
Yeah. And that's how they're kind of work their way into directing him away from the city, essentially, is what they were talking about, which is why they're setting up these sound barriers because they're going to try and tell him to go somewhere towards
Go to Canada.
yeah, literally send them to Russia. That's what they're doing. Oh, look at he's still stealing. This is a super funny shot. They literally
Everything
just shot this for
explodes.
this comedian. I was expecting there to be a big explosion, him jump, but nope.
You dumb
All him
bastard.
names.
This guy's a bully.
He's got more brains than you do. And then we get the infamous guy gets what's coming to him. Or do we?
Falls asleep.
He faints and he dies, and that's it.
What?
I shit you not. Doesn't get stepped on. They build it up like Godzilla's gonna burn him or step on him or something, even with that shot. And they're like, nah, let's just have him have a stroke and die.
We ran out of money.
Yeah, we ran out of money and the actor was tired and we just couldn't pay him ananymore. So we
Pretend
just
you had a
made him
heart
faint.
attack and just just die.
He actually just died and they just dragged him off set. Oh my god. So ideally, the reason he's just so, it's not like I always thought for the longest time, I'm like, why is he just following these people? That's so weird for Godzilla, but it's not. It just happens to be in the direction they're guiding him, which we clearly see here, which is a really cool shot. I think, yeah, where we get Godzilla kind of walking over them. Really cool because, it's more of a trope in modern day cinema where you really put monsters to scale using from human perspective shots or keeping them in the foreground to really show the mass of the creature. But that really wasn't done up until the Kong movies and this movie. In the Showa series, it was often guys in suits in the miniature place, then it would shoot to humans on location somewhere or in the studio in a set. And then they would be little action figures on the ground. And then it would be zoomed back to show that perspective. But you never get to see the perspective right from them, right here. You see them kind of in the foreground next to his foot to show the mass and height scale, which I really like that they started doing. It really makes I mean, along with Ken Pachiro's walk and the Cybot head, it makes Godzilla really look like a force to be reckoned with in this movie and less silly, essentially. Now that you pointed out that tail, that's all I can see is how fucking
Yeah, I
cool
know.
that tail
It's
is.
just so chunky.
I
and
love how
just-
long it is.
I
and
like
he
the
uses
length.
it.
It's just so chunky.
At least he uses it in this movie, though. Like, he was knocking down buildings with it and shit. Like, in the other ones, it's just kind of a thing for his enemies to grab on and throw him around by. And for Manila to step on and make him pissed off. Dad's trying to sleep, and his stupid Boglin son steps on his tail and wakes him up. You bitch! Let's go together. Now they're gonna get that kiss? Nope.
No.
He's like, no, you shot me down earlier. You're not getting you're not taking that from me. I'm not giving you the time of the day. So the whole plan here is as we see, they're guiding Godzilla away from land where he was and guiding him towards the volcano from earlier that we were looking at. So essentially, they're going to try and make some Godzilla stew.
Yeah. So I remember when I mentioned this, I'm like, why not just throw him in a volcano? And you were like, eventually that'll happen. I assume this is the
when
moment
it's
you were
gonna
talking about. Because I'm like, idiots, just fucking cook them.
Right? So, and I think the funniest factor too is like the guy was literally living skeleton and he came back from that. You really think throwing him in a lava pit's going to stop him for long? I guess it's a temporary
You could
solution,
basically
but-
just like cut off Godzilla's arm and then you could eat the rest of him. And then as long as you have the arm, he'll come back.
Yeah,
You could feed nations off of Godzilla.
essentially.
because
I mean,
generating powers.
you'd eat him and die though because of the nuclear minerals and deterrent that's in his flesh. He probably would live maybe 5 seconds and then die.
Or you become like Nuclear Man.
Oh my god, like Spider-Man, you just like get bit by Godzilla, become Godzilla.
Fight Godzilla.
Like a
just get
werewolf.
a-
Oh
Yeah.
Ironically, there was another Godzilla movie in production up until 1982, and it was actually from past editors and people who worked for Toho who like left, and they tried to make their own kind of like fan-made Godzilla film, and it was called Godzilla versus the Wolfman. And the wolf, it got almost completely filmed and finished, but Toho at the last minute said, "No, we're not going to let you do this. We got better ideas, and this is silly." And it wasn't. You know, they didn't ask permission to do it. So they were nice about it because they were people who currently worked for them, but they were like, no, we're not doing this. And they canceled the project. It looked more like Godzilla versus the Abominable Snowman because it was like a giant white wolf. There's tons of like footage and set photos from the costumes and the battle scenes and whatnot, but it never got released.
Does that mean there's just a movie out there that exists that no one's seen?
Oh, yeah. There's a couple lost Godzilla projects. There's this one. There's a couple they often do contests where they let fans like write stories, and there's been like tons of screenplays done up for like really out there concepts that I would love to get my hands on, but you know,
Just
Toho
slides
being
in.
Toho, never. I'm like, how stupid does he have to be? He's just gonna keep following the noise into the volcano. I was like, bro,
It's a hot tub.
they made him feel kind of stupid. I don't know. And here we get that like Godzilla staring at the spider moment. It's like,
Yeah, the face fuck
Yeah.
moment.
yeah, it's this awkward
There's a
scene where
moment where it literally just goes to his face, to the mouth of the spider, to his face, to the mouth of the spider, and it literally just looks like he's eyeing it down. Like, okay, man.
yeah, and he's like looking at it
Calm
like,
down.
I'm gonna get it in there. It's really awkward.
Some of these weird angles.
Boom. And that interesting shot, there is actually a real volcanic eruption that they just quickly cut there from one of the eruptions they had. They have actual
Oh,
stock
really?
footage of a volcano erupting. Yeah. And then they just comped it in there for that one scene. Super cool. This is one thing I really want to talk about and get your guys' opinion on, because I never understood this. Yes, it's a sad moment for us because we grew up with Godzilla, but as they're watching Godzilla die in this fire here, they're like tearing up. After what happened to them, wouldn't they be like, hell yeah, cracking champagne, you know, fireworks?
Yeah, really.
He
Maybe
looks
it's 'cause it's
sad.
like- maybe it's because like he was up to this point the defender of Earth, you know, like kind of.
But
the
he
moment of
wasn't,
being,
because
like-
those are all completely taken out of continuity. It's just
Yeah,
the
but I
first
mean-
one where he killed everybody, and then they killed him, and then this one.
Yeah, I guess.
There's no
So
excuse for it.
Maybe they just feel bad. You know, it's like when you hit like a squirrel in your car or something. I don't know. You can't help but to feel bad, but you're like, you stupid asshole, had to run in front of my car.
I'm glad I asked you. You know, the ending of this movie totally makes sense now. When someone asks me what the ending was about, I'm just like, you know, when you hit a squirrel with your car and you just feel really bad and you have to like pull off and like cry your ass out for 10 minutes.
You gotta
and then
take like
it.
2 minutes, call your mom and be like, well, it's gonna happen at least 3 more times.
I hit
And
a
prepare you
squirrel
for it.
and it's dead and I can't.
Wait until you hit a raccoon.
Yeah. Oh, you hit one of those, you're gonna be flipping your car, bro. They're chunky boys. At least if you hit one in Toronto, those fat boys, you'd flip a transport truck, bro. They're thick. They're thicker than Godzilla's thighs. So here we kind of get there's a common trope in the Showa ones where at the end there's always human characters waving goodbye to Godzilla, and then it's like, thank you, bye. And thank God that kind of stopped in the last one, and then now from now on we kind of just get the somber ends now. Thank goodness. And we get the original song it opened with. That's why the song played at the beginning. Now it all makes sense. It all comes around. All right.
I liked the older intros better than this one,
bro,
because it was just like, here's the movie, go.
Classic. I know.
Not like with us, with the actual movie. Like
Yeah.
when it had it just doesn't look as cool. They used to have like the movie poster thing going on.
Oh yeah. They really try. Oh, speaking of movie posters, if you want to see some great artwork, look at the artwork for this one's all right, but the rest of the Heisei artwork for all the movies was all done by the same artist, and he makes them so epic. Like, it's unreal. Like, I think he did a lot of art for like Dragon Ball covers and a lot of animes as well, and he really makes them look epic as hell. Oh, I mean, I totally forgot to mention earlier when we were talking about Dragon Ball. I believe let me find out who was involved, because I know he was involved in some way. I just gotta find how. Yeah, the Dragon Ball creator Akira Toriyama was among the many extras cast in the film fleeing from Godzilla. Toriyama was included numerous references to kaiju in his manga, such as Dr. Slump and Dragon Ball. Cool. So he was literally in the movie as an extra.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
Little fun. I know I saw it somewhere.
Small world moment.
Yeah. Gotta point that out. So that's the ending. I gotta ask now, Phil, what do you think of your first old school Godzilla experience?
That was actually a lot better than I expected.
Son of Godzilla. I swear.
I'm so happy you came in for this one, because our last guest we had on, Moses, it was also his first Godzilla experience, and he came in for All Monsters Attack, which is like the worst of the worst Godzilla film. Like, it was so low budget and bad that 80% of it is stock footage.
Really?
Yeah, from the last three movies.
1984. Oh, we didn't even get at the end. We just got a fin.
Well, that's the end in Japanese.
Bullshit.
So they kind of.
Bullshit.
It was close enough. Josh, what do you think of that one, boy?
It was okay. It was okay. Still, Mechagodzilla is probably the best too.
Yeah, and I feel like this one, for lack of a better term, it's just kind of a nice homage / rebirth of the original Gojira. Just like
I also
Gojira
do like that he's
up
a villain again.
Yeah, like Gojira
He's
set
not
up
a
the
hero.
Showa series, and then we got the Showas after that, and it dramatically changed. I feel like this is also kind of just setting the tone for what the Heisei series is going to be like. Once they start throwing in monsters and crazy plots, Showa loves their aliens and their crazy cybernetic beings taking over the world, and God behold, that is in this series. I swear it is. And it's just great. Because what's better than aliens? Space aliens.
Space titanium.
Yeah.
No, definitely not. Alrighty, guys. So that kind of brings our 18th episode. 18th? Yeah, 18th.
Yeah.
To a conclusion there. It's been really fun. I also have to say before we leave as well, our guest today, Phil, as well, has he's as well a podcaster, which is why it was so cool to have him on as part of the team today. Phil, go ahead and plug your podcast. We'll have it, obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, we'll have it in the comments below in the section, so you get a link to it to check it out as well. But go ahead and tell us about your podcast.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm a host of a podcast called Bandecdotes. What we do is we showcase and cover all sorts of underground and unsigned heavy acts from our wonderful province here in Ontario. And we bring them on our show and have them tell the wildest stories that they have from being in a band, and all the while showcasing their music at the same time. So yeah, and as we mentioned before this episode started, you were on an episode of Bandecdotes, Lucas, and it'll be out this Wednesday. So
Check
listen
it
for that.
out.
So you can listen to that for like on any podcast app, Spotify, Apple Podcast app, Google Podcast app, anywhere where you can find podcasts, you can definitely find us.
There you go. And as well, yeah, you get to hear Phil's beautiful voice again, and you can bear through listening to mine and, trudge along and hope you were listening to someone else. And luckily you can, because there are definitely tons of amazing episodes where he talks to tons of acts. And honestly, the people
Check
he
out the
talks
trauma
to,
model one.
yeah,
I like those ones.
being in heavy acts and like the crazy stories you have on the road, like it's honestly such an experience, and like to see where everyone comes from and they're all different opinions. It's definitely something
Everyone's
I
got
recommend.
some funny stories.
Exactly. It's a good time for sure.
Welcome to the band life.
Yeah. All right, guys. So next time we will be tuning in for Godzilla versus Biollante, which, like Terror of Mechagodzilla, was another fan kind of contest they threw on, basically putting out their feelers, as Tanaka loves to say, putting up my feelers, and then some tentacle hentai there. Putting out his feelers for different ideas and always trying to bring in the community and what's popular in their culture, essentially. So he put out a couple of feelers to get some contest screenplays that people could submit, and then they would pick the winner and do the movie about that. It's kind of been taken really abruptly. Like in Godzilla versus Megalon, we had Jet Jaguar be a monster they designed, and they changed it so much that it wasn't even the same character anymore. The poor kid who designed it, rest in peace, that design, read alone. But Jet Jaguar is great. So, and then we had Terror of Mechagodzilla, which was our first full screenplay done by a female screenplay director, which was really awesome. And honestly, a really cool sci-fi plot. Even if you don't like Godzilla, I definitely recommend checking out Terror of Mechagodzilla. It's a really cool cybernetic sci-fi love story with like conflicting personalities. Really well done. Really a cool concept to come into play for 1975. But yeah, the next one was a contest they submitted for a really cool design, and we'll get more into Godzilla versus Biollante when that comes. But let's just say, if you're a fan of Little Shop of Horrors and didn't like the music side of it, you should watch that movie. Oh, and if you like James Bond. Alrighty, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll tackle that film next in the series, and obviously we'll have more of our Friday the 13th series coming your way as well. We hope you guys had a great time, and we can't wait to see you again. And until then, have one killer kaiju of a time. See you later, guys.
Later.
See ya.